Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Sunset Session. We have two very special guests today. Sunset Session is brought to you by FlowerHire. Today we have Lex and Sabrina from Stone Road. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Oh, you guys are magnetic. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
So,
We got it down to a science.
Lex, we'll start with you. Tell me about what is Stone Road and what was your journey into starting Stone Road, your cannabis story?
Stone Road is a LA-based brand and farm. Our farm is in Northern California. We are in 5 states, and we are known mostly for our beautiful pre-rolls and flower, most of which we grow ourselves. What was the other question? My cannabis journey.
I mean, talk to me about
Stone
growing weed.
Road is the first place that I ever grew cannabis back in 2009. It was, I grew up in New York, but my parents had a house about an hour and a half outside of New York. And, growing up, I was always a little bit of a petulant, naughty child. And so my junior year of high school, I basically got sent to a working farm school in rural Vermont, population 650 in the entire town, 40 kids in the program. And we basically just went to school on a working farm. And so, of course, massive backfire on my parents because I learned all the basics of agriculture. So I was a pothead before. I came back, next day ordered seeds from Amsterdam, and planted them on my neighbor's property in Madison, Connecticut. And what started with 12, we ended with one magnificent plant, Big Bertha. But the product was so bad that I had to mix it with an ounce of good weed, an ounce of tobacco, because in New York we all smoked spliffs back in the day. And I started selling Stone Road spliffs. And I was a senior in high school. And
You're printing cash.
I just never stopped. Yeah, it was good. It was good. Going from making no money to I was hiding my money in my printer. And basically my dad called me. He was trying to print something. His printer wasn't working, so he came into my room. I was like, what's not going? And he opened my printer, and it basically exploded with the cash that I had made in like 3 months. And he was like, I'm not going to tell your mother, but like, how did you get this money? I'm like, Dad, it's just weed. And he's like, oh, I used to grow weed. Don't worry. Yeah. Meanwhile, my mom, thinks weed is like the second coming of the devil.
Still?
So she's evolved a lot. I'll give her that. She's evolved a lot, but I wouldn't say she's a fan of the plant. But, never too late to be a convert.
No,
Yeah.
it's true. A lot of the parents' generation, they're a big source of traffic for retail. Obviously, that many retail doesn't even cater to, but they're coming around.
Yeah. No, I mean, every day, like, my mom's friends are like, can you get gummies? Like, do you make gummies yet? And I'm like, Sabrina, I think we got to make gummies. There's a lot of old ladies texting me about gummies.
Well, you got the solventless bubble hash for all your
No, half
infused.
of our products would, like, send my mom's friends to, like, an early grave in potency. I joke with my parents' friends that we make nuclear grade level cannabis for the California market, because got to meet the market where it is. And so we actually like produce, like, anytime I test something and it's like ridiculously low, like no way we're putting it on the California market. I'm like, oh, we'll make a little batch and like give it to all my parents' friends so that they can like still enjoy it and not freak out. So
yeah, that's all they want.
Yeah.
So you growing weed in high school.
Yep.
And and you started Stone Road in 2017, 2018?
2016, yeah. Basically, the abbreviated story is, I started it with 2 partners. It didn't go as planned. In the course of a year, we faced everything from an insane spider mite to russet mite to a wildfire to one of them stealing from me to then robbing me to then one of them suing me. So it went from bad to worse. And when you're in those situations, people always say, oh, how could it get any worse? It can always get worse. It can always get worse. So just like hold on for dear life. Like as any young entrepreneur, like you can never imagine how crazy it can get until it happens.
If you haven't had a lawsuit with a former partner, you haven't started a company.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or in anything. So, it was a really, really tough initial 2 years. I learned a ton. But, we just kept going and we kept growing. And then COVID happened and that just supercharged our growth, to a different level. And then... and now we're here, sitting on the beach, getting interviewed.
And now, well, just for context, Stone Road in the last 12 months in California alone is up, 100% year over year or close to it?
Yeah, we're growing a lot in a market that's definitely contracting. And so it's like, I feel like we've been preaching the same thing for years of like, oh, just focus on the product, and eventually people will kind of recognize it. And it's like only in the last year have I feel like we've really gotten like the recognition that we've been working for. And I mean, we've also just been in the trenches for, I've been doing this, it's coming up on like 7 years for me. December will be 7 years from starting Stone Road. And so
and was Sabrina your first real basically employee over the last few years or partner?
Not first employee, but first C-suite hire.
Got it. So you literally were doing everything.
I basically had an assistant, and the farm team is separate. It's a separate company that I also
living
own.
on the farm.
Yeah, live on the farm. Yeah, head of cultivation is named Blake, and he has 2 amazing assistants who are there. And then Sabrina was like my first C-suite hire, where I was like, I need to poach some really smart, experienced people because I'm running out of ideas, and I'm getting burned out, and I
California,
need new blood.
And you want to expand. You wanted to take your brand, take your story to consumers in other markets.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's only so many hours in the day you can be awake.
Yes,
right?
Which we both put to the test all the time. I mean, people always ask, they're like, "What's the advice you can tell us?" And it's just like, there's no secrets to success. You have to work your ass off for years, and it's like there's always someone working harder. There's always someone working smarter. There's always someone with more money. It's like you can never take, excuses. It's like, you just have to keep going no matter what happens. Like we've been dealt so many setbacks time and time again. And ultimately you just have to like keep going.
All right, Sabrina, tell me about your journey into California cannabis and how you kind of got started in the industry and what you're doing now for Stone Road as Chief Operating Officer.
Yeah, so it's definitely been a wild adventure here. So kind of taking it back one step, before I moved to California, I'd always worked in the health and wellness industry and really passionate about holistic medicine. And so specifically, I worked on the vitamin, supplement, and sports nutrition side, as well as in the startup world. I'd helped build a boutique health and wellness store in Massachusetts. And so I knew cannabis was going recreational, and I found out that it was really coming to life within 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, I moved out to California. Didn't have a set plan, but knew that I just needed to dive into this industry. And that's kind of where the marriage of both my passions, both the startup environment and health and wellness, really collided. And kind of like how we were speaking about was like, I knew to enter cannabis, I was going to have to take a few steps back of where I was. And so my very first position I held, I worked in a dispensary as a bud tender, and then I moved into training their sales team. So from there, I started really networking with a lot of people in different brands, kind of like found that, for first and foremost, I couldn't be held in a single box. Like I needed, to be out in the industry doing things. And so
Talking to people.
And so I've worked for a couple different brands. Probably the most notable one was Old Pal. I worked for Old Pal for about 2.5 years, from
Rusty's been on here before.
I know, Rusty's.
I watched this episode.
Yes,
Great.
me too. Rusty is one of the most influential people in this industry. I would not trade working for him for anything. And I know one day we're going to find a way to work together again. But had a really great experience, especially like building them from their infancy stage, where value brands weren't as common as they are now. And they really did.
There's a category creator.
Right, exactly. And they really did kind of like create that secret sauce, especially with the licensing model. And so, with that kind of what we spoke about is like, I had a really great experience for 2.5 years, but I needed to do more. And like, my whole vision moving to California wasn't to like move to California and just like live here for the rest of my life. I wanted to then move to new markets, and really just once again, it's like every time we enter into a new market, it feels like the startup phase once again, because it's you're building that from the ground up in this new market. And that's what I'm most passionate about. And so, to continue the journey, that I met Lex and originally joined Stone Road as Director of National Brand Expansion, which was a dream come true for me, and then really just started inserting myself in every single aspect of the supply chain and proving myself. And now I'm serving as Chief Operating Officer, which once again, it's a dream come true. And we're launching into our 5th state now, and there's a few more to come and over the next year or so. So it's an exciting time.
Well, it sounds like a lot of work to do. But look at that smile.
But I love it. You wake up, you have a purpose. Yeah.
Well, when you believe in what it is that you're doing, your true self as a professional is unlocked. And I think you've known Lex or bumped into him a few times, probably over the years of both being in California cannabis. But when you were approached by him, you weren't necessarily looking for a job, right?
Right.
What was it about the ethos of the Stone Road brand that you're like, this might be it?
That's a great question, because I think it's very funny. So I've always been a fan. I always say I was a super fan of the brand before, but I'd never met Lex. Even though we were at a lot of the same trade shows and conferences, we never met. But I remember I was at Hall Flowers, and I saw a couple gals walking around with our infamous bucket hat. You can spot it from a mile away. And I wanted one, so I went over to the table and asked if they had any, and they were like, oh no, we're out, yada yada. So I DM'd them on Instagram. I was like, do you sell these anywhere in SoCal? He's like, oh, give me your address, I'll mail you one. Anyway, wasn't looking for a job at this point. I was still with Old Pal, but once again, kind of looking for a more national role, and I ended up joining a different company for a very short amount of time. And it's funny, Lex saw that I left Old Pal, messaged me on LinkedIn telling me he saw I left Old Pal, telling me that there was a position open for Director of Sales with Stone Road. And it's funny. No, at first it was Director of Sales, and I turned it down, and I was like, no, I don't want to tie myself to California. I want to work on a national level. You're like, oh, well, I'm also hiring for a Director of National Brand Expansion. I'm like, great, perfect, sign me up.
AKA, I was just like, let me hire you, whatever you want to do.
So hold on. So you had heard of her, and so that sounds to me as a recruiter, you're like, this is somebody that I've heard great things about, that I think might be a fit for this role I'm creating. I need this right hand to help drive revenue. And what was it about her that you're like, you'd reached out and you're about to, and you're like, oh no, she took a job. You're like, no.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, everything happens for a reason. So all the timing ultimately worked out. But for me, it's like and Sabrina can attest to this, I'm a very, very hands-off boss. I can be a little bit of a control freak, but ultimately it's like I just want people to do the job and to be a self-starter. And it's like I don't have enough time in my day to micromanage. That's not true. I'm working on it, but I do micromanage. But ultimately it's like I really want someone who's hungry, And it's like I always say to Sabrina, it's like every facet of our job revolves around sales. We're selling literally a product to dispensaries. We're selling our team and story to investors, and we're selling out-of-state partners on the potential for what this brand can be. So it's like whether you're selling X, Y, or Z, you always have to have the basic sales. So I knew I wanted someone with a sales experience. I also wanted someone who came, from basically the bottom and worked their way up through the entire supply chain, because it's like, it's absolutely invaluable experience. Like we've seen with all the mergers and acquisitions, how many executive teams don't know how to do sales, don't know how to do manufacturing,
Or
don't know how to do
disconnected from it completely.
Exactly. It's like, of our probably like 70 best accounts, I could text 50 of the owners and be like, "What's wrong? This happened. I'm so sorry." And Sabrina could text the rest of them. And it's a connection to the retailers, which has allowed us to continue to grow in this contracting market, and it's a connection to the out-of-state partners, which is why, besides like literally Old Pal and Kiva, we're in like the most states of like small privately owned brands. And so for us, it is ultimately about focusing on, your strengths, being willing to work, and then finding someone who is just naturally hungry. And it's like, I met Sabrina, it's like, I knew she meant business. Like she was ready to rock. Yeah.
Yeah. And what are the pillars of like the Stone Road brand? Like what does it stand for? Like when a consumer is out there and they're like, this brand speaks to me, it's an inclusive labeling, I love the packaging, and they read into it more, what do you want them to know about what the quality that they're putting into their body, and what does that represent?
Yeah, I mean, I'll cover we've distilled it down to basically 3 core pillars. The first being sustainability. Obviously, our farm is completely off-grid, so solar panels, all the water from our own artesian wells. So, we weren't going to have a really sustainable cultivation operation without, transferring those same ethos into the packaging. Also, as we can see right behind us, like the beautiful surf in Southern California means I've really picked up a hobby of surfing, and nothing bums me out more than being in the water and swimming into a plastic bag. So for us, the ability to eliminate as much petroleum-based plastic from our supply chain as possible was not just something we wanted to do, but something we had to do. Second, value ties into the farm. We own multiple steps of the supply chain, so it's not like a purely licensing model where we don't know what's going into our product or who's packing it. It's like we are on the ground level at every step, from like literally choosing the genetics to growing it to processing it, trimming it in-house, bringing it to a manufacturer who, we work with a very select group of manufacturers, choosing the hash, choosing the THCA diamonds, because we know it's like there's a million brands, especially in California. And it's just like, if the product doesn't knock the consumer's socks off, they're probably not coming back. So there's just no room for like a bad batch. And then third is inclusivity. Obviously for us, we really target women. We target people in the queer community, but obviously at the end of the day, it's anyone that likes all natural cannabis products for a really affordable price. So I'll let Sabrina kind of touch on whatever I missed, but those are our core 3.
Yeah, no, you definitely touched upon all 3. I've just to echo some of that. So especially on the sustainability side, I think that's one thing we do really different is, aside from our farm being completely off-grid, solar powered, like all of our own water comes from our own 460-foot deep artesian well. And then also we're a completely no-spray farm, which is almost unheard of, especially in cannabis at the scale that we are. And so when I say no spray, I mean like not even organic sprays.
You use natural
ladybugs, predator mites, beneficial fungi. And it's like, if you tested like our flower is more organic than like an organic bunch of kale at Whole Foods. And that's really just a testament to how dialed in our cultivation team is.
And I think it does translate into the quality of the experience.
Right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And when somebody understands that, and they're like, it also gives them this just the feeling of like they're doing something good for themselves.
Right.
Right. Because people are very conscious about what they're putting in or on their bodies these days, and this speaks to that completely.
Right. And, for that, it was, Lex creating products like, both of us consume a lot of Stone Road. That's, products that we do feel okay consuming ourselves daily. And that's why, we like to say we have the most natural product. Like the only thing that ever goes into Stone Road products is, high quality flower and then solventless bubble hash. And then we do now add some THCA diamonds to some of our infused SKUs, but it's like that was our answer, the most natural route to meeting the consumer at wanting the highest THC for, the most value price point. But aside from that, like we never use distillate, botanical terpenes, fillers, none of that. And aside from that, I just wanted to also echo on the inclusivity side. It's like for us, beyond just our branding and, being focused, towards the women and LGBTQ plus demographic, we also take inclusivity like one step further. That's why we have such a diverse array of SKUs. Like whether somebody has sub $10 to grab a joint on their way home, or they want to invest in a half-ounce, pre-ground pouch that's going to last them 2-3 weeks a month. It's like we want to have options for them. We like to say like Stone Road's for all walks of life. And that's why, if you look at our Instagram and whatnot, like we really like to showcase people in their true form, consuming the product and in their most authentic selves. And like, I feel like in cannabis, there's a lot of two ends of the spectrum, Mendocino farmer vibes, and then heavily tattooed girl taking a dab by a pool. And like, we love it both, but we also want to showcase everything in between because, it's like, there's so many people from all different demographics, cultures,
the plant
groups.
Brings people together.
Exactly.
And people use it, and you don't have to go for like a certain stereotype
Right,
of
exactly.
cannabis in order to sell in California. And is that the secret sauce? Like people say California cannabis is dead, you can't be a brand and survive. And there's definitely challenges, right, to the retail supply chain. The largest distributors just shut down last week here in California. It's impacting lots of things.
Yeah.
What is the secret sauce of being a brand that is gaining market share at a time when so many others are failing or losing hope?
So I'll kick that off with 2 points and then let Lex share his thoughts. But I feel like first and foremost is we've grown organically and sustainably, hence our products. It's like we didn't raise all of this money, deploy this huge team, burn a lot of cash. Like instead, we've really just stayed lean and like built this brand, built the demand. And it's like now we're able to scale. It's like once we already had the fundamentals, the revenue in place to really scale a brand, where I feel like there's a lot of people who enter the cannabis space with just a lot of money, kind of have that corporate idea of how you're supposed to build a brand. And it's like, it's a lot of those companies that we're seeing leave the market because they realize like that cannabis is so wildly different. It doesn't work like that. So I feel like for us, that's been key, really building that first and foremost. And then second is kind of what we were speaking about. It's like there is not a single job in the entire supply chain that Lex and I couldn't do ourselves. And because, being a 2-person team up until now, it's like we have had to do every single little job, no matter how big or small, like, from pitching investors to like, Lex actually helping at the farm, to everything in between.
Yeah, I'll let you finish.
And how,
Tell a funny
Okay.
story.
and how many retail doors in California alone, like right now?
In the past year, we've delivered to over 400. Right now, I'd say we deliver to an average between 120 and 150. But I just wanted to jump on Sabrina's point, talking about doing every step. We had a huge delivery, $30,000+ delivery. The transporter cancels right before. Sabrina flies up to Oakland, rents a car, grabs the products, fills up, what was it, like some Prius or something, fills up like thousands of boxes. The BCC's watching this and was like, yes. Drives it down, parks at her house, wakes up the next day, goes and does the delivery, returns the car and comes back. And that was a 36-hour day. So I'm just saying you
Do what you gotta do.
do what you gotta do. All right,
Exactly.
But-
Thank you for sharing that.
But even saying like 100 you said 150 shops on average, like monthly or quarterly?
Monthly.
Monthly.
And sales team. Like, we're looking at the sales team here. And you've launched in how many states in the last 18 months, 12 months? Three, about to be 4.
About to be.
Hey, high five to you. There's a hustle motor there for sure.
Yeah,
We're
we love the
hungry.
hustle.
And then, yeah, just kind of coming back to it, I think one of the other things is a lot of, like the execs, like they don't have touch with, these retail accounts or even these out-of-state partners. It's like, it's the relationships that really take you far. And it's like, if you lose a few of your core salespeople, it's like, that's a huge chunk of business that you can potentially lose. And even in the interim of you now getting in touch with the buyer or the owner, like now establishing your own relationship, like that takes time. It's like, no salesperson like gets their book of business overnight, And so, being that we have all of these relationships, like every account has our personal cell phone number, can call us literally any time of the day. And especially now that we're in other markets, like we mean any time of the day. I'll get calls at 5 a.m. But, we make it happen and we never discount how important relationships are. And I'll let you tell your secret sauce.
No, that was right on.
You nailed it. Okay, so I think when the consumer becomes educated about cannabis and legal market, the single source from farm to shop brand, whole plant, natural soil, organic farming, whatever you want to say, like that's what the consumer wants,
Yep.
right? Now, talking about going into other states and finding the right partners in other states, it's got to be challenging because California, Northern California is known for the best outdoor cannabis terroir on the planet. What about like Massachusetts or Michigan or Oklahoma? Like, how do you?
Not as good. No, there's great weed in, a lot of different markets, and there's a lot of talented growers who have left, California and Colorado and forged their ways in these new markets, and they are pioneers that we are grateful for because the weed was really bad before they got there. But yeah, no, I mean, for us, it's like we have a set of SOPs, standard operating procedures, and just basically freshness requirements for us, where it's like, as someone who consumes a lot of cannabis, Sabrina as well, it's like we know the biggest issue in at least California cannabis is that it takes so long to get these products to market that like most of the cannabis has been harvested like 6 months before it actually hits the shelves, between the testing, the packaging, the distro, the blackout days that they don't pick up, the restickering. Yeah, it's just like you can't imagine how long it takes. Like our operation is incredibly dialed in that we basically have the cultivation, processing, manufacturing all like within literally like a 40-mile hub. And it still takes about 2.5 to 3 weeks to get something. And that's with nothing going wrong, like everything just happening as fast as it compliantly and humanly can. And so it's going to other states and being like, only make a batch that you'll project to sell in 90 days. Don't stick to one sticker. Like in California, we do constantly rotating flavors. We always want something new. Cannabis consumers, they always want something new. It's like we're not doing our 6 core flavors and that's it. It's like right now we have like 82 different unique SKUs on our menu in California right now.
All flower SKUs.
And concentrate, hash, sugar sauce, diamond sauce, literally everything. And so for us, it's like we want a menu that is going to sell itself, because these buyers are getting inundated with menus, with emails, thousands a day. And it's just like, especially now, it's like, okay, we're differentiating ourselves, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it needs to move on the consumer level, because you see all these MSOs departing California, and it's like they spent millions of dollars, marketing teams, in-store pop-ups, whatever, but it's like the consumers, it never caught on. And so for us, it's like not only do we have such a great like core of support, but we really find like it only takes really 1 or 2 puffs of some really fresh weed for people to like taste the difference.
And so finding partners that are ready to prioritize
to
and put
listen
the
to
bra-
us.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's a big thing. It's like we
Sure.
don't tell them all this stuff because we're trying to be bummers. Like, you know, we tell them like, look, we have a crystal ball into what your market will probably look like in 6, 8, and 10 years. It's gonna be bad. You know, it's like you can't like. Our partners in one of our East Coast states, you know, they were so used to $4,000 selling $4,000 wholesale
Yeah,
pounds.
they raised money against the projections.
Exactly.
You know,
And then it's
yeah.
like, surprise, 18 months later, it's $1,200 a pound for indoor. So it's just like, okay, can you now survive in that market? It's like, okay, we're going to have to get a lot leaner and really change our business model. And like what Sabrina kind of alluded to about, you know, there was so much money raised in cannabis. I mean, I remember the Flocana, like 120 or 128 million
More
is like
than that.
burned into my brain
Yeah.
because I remember seeing like their investor letter, I think last year, and we like delivered to literally the same amount of shops to them. And I'm like, I have one employee and we've raised 1/100th of of like their amount, and it's just like it doesn't, yeah, it's like exactly what you're saying, like it doesn't matter about the money, it doesn't
This
matter.
is what consumers want
It's
in a branded world.
it's at the end of the day, it's about the product sells itself and consumers keep going back because it's a really good product, and it's really hard to sell a shitty product, you know.
Yeah.
And I know how to do that too because it's like when I didn't have my own
But
license.
you can't mix with tobacco though. in this,
No, yeah. But it's like, you know, even in California, it's like when I was getting started, and then, you know, originally it was medical, so we could just get good weed, grind it up, and roll joints and sell it to the stores. And then, of course, you know, the track and trace and the licensed farmers, and then it was like literally every brand was competing for like 15 legal farms, like absolutely terrible smalls that were super overpriced. Everyone was going into the licensing model, which we did as well, and then we had no control over our product. And it's just like for a good year, like our product was not good. Do you know what I mean? It's like we had no control over the supply chain, and the biggest kind of complaint we got was inconsistency. So when that manufacturer basically went up in flames, it was both a blessing and, you know, a curse that our entire supply chain was knocked out in the course of 3 weeks. But it was great because we had to rebuild from the ground up.
And you know what you were looking for this time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So talking about the message of inclusivity and the ethos around that, and some of the brands and the strains that you've launched recently,
Yeah.
I got a kick out of them.
The Pride ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Sabrina's idea to use different like Pantone colors. So we did like the bisexual flag, we did like the trans flag, we did like the non-binary, we did like the gender non-conforming flag, all the flags. But you know, it's like we're just having fun with it. It's like we know like our consumers are gonna absolutely eat it up, and it's like we were exactly right. Like we flew through all the boxes in like 7 days, and the singles we have like maybe 500 left of each, and those will be gone by the end of the week. So it's just like we sold a shitload of gay weed during Pride Month, and we're gonna sell it year round.
And it works, and it differentiates, and the buyers love it and the consumers love it.
Yeah, I mean it's ultimately back to product. It's like we're also not trying to like push some old product into the Pride and sell it under like a rainbow sticker. It's like they all test in the low 40s. They all have fresh smalls, hash, THCA, diamonds. Like they all taste amazing, smell amazing. So, you know, for us, it's like at the end of the day, we're precisely focused on the highest quality product that we can fit into our pricing matrix.
Can I add something on that?
Of course.
And kind of too, you know, one of the things aside from just our Pride strain, you'll notice like a lot of our strains are kind of out there, not the average ones you're seeing. And, you know, how we're able
Not all Blue Dream?
It's not all Blue Dream. And even if it is, we're not going to call it Blue Dream because like we understand, like me coming from retail, it's like a shop doesn't want, you know, 10 different Northern Lights from 10 different brands. You know, they really are picking and choosing and being systematic with their menus. And so for us, we do have that flexibility. It's like, you know, especially with, you know, choosing the flower strain with what hash we're going to pair it with. It's like, as long as we have an idea of the flavor notes and whatnot, like we come up with names in line with that, but not your average, you know, strain names. And I think that really differentiates it on menus. And then aside from that, like our cultivation team is so dialed in with which strains grow best in which season. And it's agriculture, just like fruits and vegetables. There are going to be certain fruits and vegetables that grow best in the spring, but not in the winter. And so now that our cultivation team is so dialed in, it's like we're only cultivating what's going to grow best in that season. And then, we make a hash that pairs nicely with it. And that's how we come up with a lot of our different strain names.
I mean, I love that you've built the brand and the supply chain around what California cannabis was supposed to be. You know, it was supposed to be living soil, outdoor, sun-grown, finding the right strains to grow in the microclimate in which you have.
No, and to touch like on what Sabrina was just saying, like we really go after interesting genetics. And, I feel like when Dark Heart was supplying like 60% of the state with like teens and clones and stuff, it's like we all kind of, even though we didn't want to, we all were kind of like growing the same genetics. We're now, rest in peace, Dark Heart. But, now that there's kind of the big player is gone, like we're finding really small, unique cultivars, really interesting genetics, things that we've never seen before and never smelled things like that before. And, it's like Sabrina was saying, it's like there's room for really interesting new flavors and new terpene profiles because the consumer is getting like actively more educated.
So, so the message of inclusivity, obviously lands in California, lands in Massachusetts, but you're seeing it land in like New Mexico and Oklahoma and Michigan, like, in terms of finding your demographic and finding your customer out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I always joke that like, I just saw the stat like that, 25 or 30% of like Gen Zers identify as like being on some kind of the spectrum. Not for us millennials, we're so boring. It's like gay, straight, or trans, and they're just like, I'm omnisexual, yeah, and we're like, great. And so for us, it's like, we see that general trend going where like the world is becoming, more accepting. Obviously, there's always going to be step backs like what we're seeing in Florida and kind of this banning of, healthcare. And so for us, it's just, ultimately, we know we have an audience for our product. A lot of the time, it's just convincing our out-of-state partner to just go with it. Just let us do what we do. We're the equal opportunity nudist for a reason. If you look on our Instagram, there's a whole lot of skin. It's black, white, gay, straight, trans, whatever. It's every expression of the human body. Exactly. It's beautiful, interesting looking people. And the fact that people DM us and being like, I can't tell if your latest model is a man or a female. I'm like, that's the fucking point. You don't need to tell me that. And so it's like, that's actually funny. I'm joking about people DMing us because that was actually one of our lovely investors who was just like, I can't tell if your latest post is a man or a woman, but I'm really into it. I'm like, thank you, daddy. So, it's like, it's as we were joking before we started filming, like we went to like rural Michigan to check out some biodynamic farms, had a great trip, like sat down in Chipotle, and I'm like, okay, all three of the staff in this random ass Chipotle are definitely queer or something, like gender nonconforming, trans, queer, whatever. And it's like all these people, 100% of the Chipotle employees right here would buy Stone Road. So I'm like, we're good to go,
Right.
Sabrina's like, I don't have
Question.
What was the question?
How do you like convince like other states that it's gonna play? Honestly, because we point to the success of California.
Exactly, and kind of like what I was saying is history does repeat itself, and it's like we don't just have track record from one state, 2 states, 3 states. We're on our 5th state, and we have a few more in the pipeline. It's like people, that's the data they're looking at, and aside from just inclusivity, it's like our price point, kind of going back to, really does appeal to all walks of life, and that's why strategically in the markets we enter, we want to make sure that even if we do launch with like the half-ounce pouch, the 10 packs, for example, like Massachusetts, our 10 pack is our core product, but we also knew it was very important to also have a single, because not only is that allowing people who may have less of a budget to also enjoy Stone Road, but it's less of a risk, you know? It's like, I always say people are loyal to brands, but they're more loyal to their wallet. And it's like, that's the appetizer. And then once they try the single, the appetizer, and they really enjoy it, they're like, okay, that is worth me investing in the 10-pack now. And so...
And for the consumer out there, if you don't know, the single has a glass tip. You'll
glass
tube. Sorry, you'll feel like you're
Louis Vuitton feel
Zara
price point.
There we go.
Or Gap if you're middle American.
So
gotten Zara yet.
So obviously, FlowerHire, we do recruiting, executive search, and HR advisory. So I guess last question for this evening: are you guys hiring? What do you look for when you are hiring? If someone's interested in being part of the story, if they're compelled by the founder vision, how do they get in touch with you? Email?
Yeah.
We just started someone today.
Yeah, we're finally expanding our team. We just made our first in-house sales hire, so really excited about that, so we can focus more on, expanding into other states. But, we really do keep things lean, and I feel like right now, kind of our core needs, definitely looking for our next big investor. And then, really, I would say we're also looking for good operators in new markets. And, where we may not have a position for someone right now, it's like we're always looking for talent in new markets to then plug into, our partners in that state. But yeah, I just want to say FlowerHire is by far the best, recruiting group in cannabis. Like every single step of my career, since I moved to California, somebody from FlowerHire has been in touch with me. Ian, shout out to Ian. Ian never misses a beat. If he sees, he'll be the first to see on an Instagram story or LinkedIn post and I'm looking to leave or make a change, and he's the first one to message me, always looking out. And I feel like you guys really, even though you've now expanding into 17 states, it still feels like you guys have such a personal connection that's so different than any other recruiting agency I've ever spoken to or even known. So
I mean, this is not scripted.
Shout out
I'm gonna
FlowerHire.
I'm gonna cry, but
not
it's
a paid ad.
We try to be part of the community, and we try
And
to
you
connect
are.
good people and give a platform for founders to tell their stories. And I don't even know that we actually have ever helped you land a job. You just had a positive. You just had a great experience in talking to us.
Exactly, but I push FlowerHire to everyone. I actually have a friend who is about to switch positions in Michigan, and it is thanks to FlowerHire. So FlowerHire, no matter what market you're in, they've got you covered.
Not my words.
What a plug.
Wow, dude.
She's a pro.
This is good. She is great at business development and sales.
That's going to be the next FlowerHire, video.
Yeah, she's like, I would have used them, but, I'm too cheap, so I'm just going to keep all the money myself.
I'm just going to do all the jobs myself.
Yeah.
You don't need a recruiter. You can do all the jobs.
Yeah.
Anything you'd say on future team expansion or what?
Yeah,
you
I
need?
mean, if you have a passion for cannabis and you're a self-starter, even if right now is not the right time, we'd love to meet you, and we're always expanding the team. And it's an exciting time to be in the industry. There's a lot of change going on, and I think we're going to emerge stronger.
We are. We're going to get through this.
Yes.
Thank you guys for coming in today. This is fantastic.
So much.
Nuts.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.